As of the time of this recording, Jujutsu Kaisen comes to a close within just 3 chapters. MHA has already ended, and right now there's a lot of refugees looking for a weekly manga. So, without further ado, here's everything that's happened in Kagurabachi so far. Also, spoilers ahead.
Sometimes you gotta close the door to open a window.
We're introduced to a younger Chihiro Rokuhira and Kunishige Rokuhira, the father of Chihiro. We learn that Kunishige is actually a world-famous bladesmith who created the 6 Enchanted Blades and a 7th in secrecy. Kunishige is basically just the Oppenheimer of this world, and we're also introduced to these goldfish, and they'll become important later on. Also, Kunishige is kind of a major goofball. We're introduced to Shiba, an old friend of Kunishige who's known him for a long time. Shiba, much like Kunishige, is also a goofball, but also an absurdly strong goofball that'll come into fruition a little bit later on. After a small catch up here, Shiba leaves and Kunishige decides that it's time to let Chihiro know about the seriousness of the business that they are in. These swords that they create, while incredibly powerful, are meant to protect and will ultimately end up taking lives later on down the line. And by extension, both Chihiro and Kunishige are complicit in the lives that those blades happen to take. Kunishige asks if Chihiro can carry that burden, to which he replies he doesn't know, but he's committed to it nonetheless. Time skip 38 months into the future, and we're introduced to a bunch of unnamed bad guys here, one of which will be important later on down the line, but we are shown the brutality of the world of sorcery as a whole here. Cutting back to Chihiro and Shiba on a train, we've noticed that Chihiro now has a scar on his face, and Shiba asks him if he'll ever have it removed because it's sorcery magic. Chihiro replies with the iconic line right now, that he'll keep the scar so every day when he sees it, he can start the morning with a fresh hatred, and this line became quite the meme, and it tricked a lot of folk into thinking Chihiro is just another edgelord MC, but there is definitely layers to this. Give it time, let it cook. Speaking of layers, consider layering up, get yourself some fresh merch by weebco.com. Cheeky plug. Anyway, help support the channel. But turns out Chihiro and Shiba here were looking for the Yakuza. These guys that we saw previously, Chihiro comes to realize how brutal these guys actually are. Finding their hideout, both Shiba and Chihiro proceed to absolutely dominate the goons inside. Standing in the doorway like Batman, Chihiro unleashes the power of the 7th Enchanted Blade, N10. Also, remember those goldfish? Yeah, that's why they're important. Anyway, Chihiro proceeds to absolutely dominate a room full of men pretty easily using Kuro, which is an ability that allows him to send a flying slash at his opponents. Chihiro and Shiba proceed to interrogate this guy who was sat with this guy a little bit earlier on, mentioning how they're looking for the Hishaku. However, when Mutton Chop's goon here decides that he was unable to spill the beans, his body suddenly rips apart from sorcery that was placed on him to stop him from blabbing, presumably from this guy. You following so far? Because it's only been about a chapter and a half so far. A lot's happened. We learned Chihiro just a mere 3 years ago had 0 combat experience, and he hasn't even unlocked the full potential of these blades yet. Really. This part is insanely important, keep that in your mind. We get a flashback and we're shown the death of Chihiro's father as Shiba arrives to their hideout, which he notices the barrier was broken, and 3 people appear killing Kunishige, stealing the 6 Enchanted Blades and leaving Chihiro to grieve over his father. We get more character work between Chihiro and his father as they discuss the way of the world and what type of katana the world needs. And once again, we're shown the goldfish Kunishige brought for Chihiro, and these fish now represent Chihiro's power within N10, and it's those theorized that this event right here is what caused N10's powers to manifest, but that's a different video for a different time here. Also, by the way, while you're here, like and subscribe, it helps me out. Anyways, back to the present, Shiba makes Chihiro aware that there has been a sighting of the Enchanted Blade in Tokyo. We're then introduced to Hinao, who is essentially a fixer from Night City, but in Kagurabachi instead. We see a younger Chihiro and a younger Shiba coming in for information about the Hishaku. This scene parallels the introduction of Shaw appearing in the same place. Shaw knows about an Enchanted Blade, and Shaw will also become one of your favourite characters in the series when you read this manga. Also, go read this manga after you've read this video. Watch this video. It's revealed that Shaw is also an orphan, similar in a way to Chihiro, and the two take a liking to each other. As Chihiro takes her out to grab some food, as the two are eating, Shaw reveals information that the Enchanted Blade that confirms she isn't lying. However, their conversation is interrupted by a sorcerer who's been sent out to look for and retrieve Shaw. Blowing up the restaurant with an ability called Invincible, which will become important later on, Chihiro and the sorcerer begin to fight, and Chihiro makes sure that Shaw is safe and free while Shiba teleports her to safety. The two begin to fight further and begin giving us some explanations into how Enchanted Blades work. The Enchanted Blades essentially amplify the spirit energy inside a person, and it allows them to put it into a concentrated form within the blade. It's also something that the human body can't handle. This is also important for later. Anyways, the fight continues, and the sorcerer, thinking that he has Chihiro on the back foot, capturing him, Chihiro activates Kuro, Aka, and says the word Invincible, same words used by the same sorcerer to blow up the restaurant. However, now Chihiro is sending his own attack flying back at him. asking the defeated sorcerer where the Cloud Gouger is, the enchanted blade that Shaw has given information to. Shiba takes the sorcerer, Chihiro IV, for interrogation, and Chihiro takes Shaw to go out and grab some food. It's at this point that we're introduced to the main villain of this arc, Sojo Genichi, and we're introduced to him as he has a man strung up who's begging for death. Sojo begins to move out as he sends more and more sorcerers after Chihiro, who is ambushed while he is with Shaw with him. A fight breaks out and Chihiro fights a sorcerer who's able to clone himself, and this sorcerer was someone who'd fought in the war and agrees that the true power of this enchanted blade is quite stupendous, but they had the power to end that hell on earth, which is why I said remember that Chihiro's power is still nothing in comparison to what they could be. Chihiro is overwhelmed by the numbers of the sorcerer and is caught off guard by a second sorcerer who makes Chihiro have a flashback PTSD of the night his father was killed. Even though it felt like hours reliving that moment, it was only a mere 4 seconds that went by. However, once Chihiro catches his breath, he reminds these sorcerers he's fighting that those visions that he was saved only serve as fuel for him. This happens as it's revealed that Shaw has a special ability that can basically heal her body extremely fast, and she's from a unique clan of human beings within this world. Chihiro begins to cut everyone down around him, rescuing Shaw and hands her a burger. This will also become important later on down the line. As Chihiro is carrying Shaw to safety, he is ambushed by a couple more sorcerers who now is tired and weary. He opts to fight, but we are now introduced to Azumi, a man who is friends with Shiba and Kunishigi on the way back. Now Azumi makes short work of these opponents and makes sure that Chihiro doesn't draw that blade. Even one of these opponents backs out simply because it is Azumi. Now it turns out Azumi is a high-ranking member of the Kamunabi, which is basically this world's version of the military that works with the government. Azumi, Chihiro, and Shaw all go back to where Hinao and Shiba are, with Shiba and Azumi having some banter, and it's revealed that the higher-ups want to see Shiba, and there is a discussion to be had of Azumi confiscating the N10 blade from Chihiro. However, Shiba insists that they be left to their own devices for the time being, and he mentions how Chihiro can now fight. It's revealed to us in a month's time that the Rakuzaichi auction will begin, and the enchanted blade, the Shinuchi, will be held for auction, and this blade was submitted by none other than Genichi Sojo, who we now find out is working for the Hishaku. Azumi warns Chihiro that Sojo is simply out of his league and to leave it to them. Azumi leaves and warns them to be ready. Now we get a flashback to the sorcerer Chihiro fought, who's now named Norisaku. Turns out Shiba convinced him to leave all of this life behind and return to his family, and as he makes efforts to do so, he enters his car where his sister is, and it turns out he's been met with Sojo sat behind him. Turns out Sojo stabbed his sister, and Norisaku believes her to be dead, and he tries to blow up the car with him and Sojo inside, but Sojo freezes him with the abilities of Cloud Gouger and mentions how his sister was only unconscious. Sojo also finds the brother of the Mind Sorcerer who was defeated by Chihiro and made him have the PTSD vision, killing him, but not before being caught in his own mind powers, similar fashion to Chihiro. If you want to see a more deeper, in-depth video of that, check out this video here, because that goes in depth after that. But obviously, once you've read the series or watched this video, it'd make more sense. Anyway, Sojo kills this dude and proceeds to walk straight into the cafe where Chihiro, Shaw, and Hinao, where as Shiba and Azumi are on their way to the Kamunabi HQ. The two begin to fight Enchanted Blade N10 versus the Enchanted Blade Cloud Gouger. Now, Shiba and Azumi discuss the ramifications of an Enchanted Blade being out in the wild within the city, and as that conversation happens, Chihiro and Sojo both begin to fight while Sojo questions how Chihiro has a blade. Are you staying with me? Because there's only been like a couple of chapters here, we're not even into the double digits of chapters here. Anyway, Sojo reveals how he loves Kunishigi, and he goes on to talk about how he's the only one who truly really understands him. Activating Mei, Sojo tries to obliterate the street below, but Chihiro simply just says no and tanks the blast. Sojo is shocked that Chihiro is still standing and asks how he even did that. Sojo tries to activate that same attack again. Due to the time limit, he can't. Chihiro tells him, "You're the one who doesn't understand here," and they proceed to fight him further. Now, as the fight continues to heat up, Chihiro is kind of on the losing side. The Kamunabi finally appear and step in to stop the fight from going any further than it needs to be. Sojo, admitting that he's not in the correct state to fight these guys right now, decides he's going to disappear. Now, while Chihiro chases the car thinking that this car is carrying Shaw, it was just actually a henchman using one of Shaw's severed legs as bait to mislead him. Remember, Shaw can reheal limbs and injuries stupidly fast. Shiba catches up to Chihiro, who is about to faint from all the fight. I mean, he just tanked lightning, and he took a beating. Chihiro wakes up in the hospital, plagued with the memories of failing to rescue Shaw, as Asami and Shiba come in. Now, Shiba makes Chihiro aware that Sojo has the Daten Sekai, the material used to create these enchanted blades, which Norisaku referenced a little bit ago about the blades allow people to harness the power that it can't be contained within the human body. Now, we see Sojo explaining this exact same thing, where we also learn Sojo is experimenting on Shaw because he believes that hair flesh may be the powers to learning how to harness the power of the Daten Sekai without your body exploding. Now we're introduced to an elite squad of Kamunabi fighters who are part of the plan to retrieve the Cloud Gouger Enchanted Blade. Now this group briefs Chihiro on the events and tells him about the plan, to which Chihiro tells them, "I'm in." The group moves out, and after some planning, Sojo faces off against the Kamunabi group, as we're officially introduced to Ikuta Hagiwara. Now, at the same time, Chihiro infiltrates Sojo's hideout. Now, the fight starts with the group lifting Sojo into the air on a big block of ice or concrete, I'm not entirely sure, in an effort to get him away from the city and minimize damages. Now, this plan is to draw out Sojo's Mei attack, being it's the most ultimate attack. They want to tank the attack and then counter within the time limit that he is unable to use the attack. They estimate that they're safe for about an interval of about 10 seconds, give or take. Now, we are shown a flashback of Kunishigi talking about the Daten Sekai and how its powers can transform completely based on its holding. Now, we are shown the parallel of Sojo and Chihiro both heavily injured and being pushed to their limits. Chihiro is found while trying to infiltrate the compound of Sojo's here and is pushed by Sojo's men. And in a brief flashback of Kunishigi talking to him happens, telling him how his vision needs to be more flexible. As this all happens, Chihiro develops an on-the-spot new ability with Enten, Kuro Shred. Now, we are given a brief flashback of Shaw and her mother. Once again, Shaw is eating food. She just like me, for real, for real. Now, we get a brief explanation on Kuro Shred. Rather than one slash, Chihiro splits up the slashes into 20 miniature slashes, and it allows him to create a similar attack power without the burden on his body. Now, Chihiro's innate understanding of Enten has been deepened by these events. Proceeding to decimate everyone in the compound at a ridiculous speed, Chihiro finally reaches Shaw and proceeds to give her another burger. Remember how I said that was going to be important? Anyway, when all that wholesomeness is going on, Chihiro has his arm slightly healed by Shaw, only kind of. Now, at the same time, in the next 10 to 20 seconds, the Kamunabi and Sojo's fight reaches its climax, with Sojo simultaneously deepening his understanding with Cloud Gouger. He manages to completely overpower them after taking some injuries. Now, as Chihiro senses their deaths, he concentrates solely on fighting Sojo, who has appeared in front of him, and within the next 12 seconds, their fight will be concluded. As the countdown starts, with each clash of their blades between them, Sojo and Chihiro interact with each other in some sort of soul realm. Think of this fight as sort of Naruto Sasuke. Every time they punch, they're able to sense each other's feelings. They end up having a discussion about the blades themselves and Chihiro's lineage, and this is a sequence of the penultimate conclusion of their interactions, and I highly, highly recommend that you go read the official once you're done with this video. I'm not going to fully explain all this because there is a lot that needs... These are videos in and of themselves, and this is just a basic recap. But the two come to the conclusion that they are both right in their assessment of the blades, and ultimately, while respecting their views, they still can't agree. One of them's gonna die. As this conversation happens, we are shown the bodies of the Kamunabi who had fought with Sojo just moments beforehand. Remember, all of this is all happening within the space of around 10 to 20 seconds, give or take. The fight continues with the two trading blows and each other losing an arm to each other's blade strokes. Putting everything into one last swing, Chihiro uses Kuro, and Chihiro slices through Cloud Gouger and Sojo. Now the two have one last discussion about the swords, and Shiba appears with Shara's back ready to catch Chihiro just before he falls. Great little callbacks all the time. And this guy appears behind Shiba, who disappears before Shiba can spot him. Remember him? Very important guy. Sojo crawls away and in a final desperate attempt tries to use the Daten Sekai before succumbing to its power and exploding with the castle around it. Fast forward about 10 days later, we're introduced to the Kamunabi, who discuss the events that happened at the castle, and we learn that the lifelong contract is something that is built into these swords. It's a mechanism built into the blades to allow only one user per blade. Think of it as nuclear launch keys. Remember how I said Kunishigi is kind of like the Oppenheimer of this world? These are his nuclear weapons, these are the keys. We're made aware that only two survived the attack from Sojo, Ikuto Hagiwara and Kazane. The Kamunabi decide that sending on their strongest fighter, Hiyuki, to retrieve Enten, Cloud Gouger, and bring in Chihiro. Hiyuki is given permission to use something known as Flamebone from the torso up. Now we're introduced to a character that is known as Hakuri. Now, Hakuri was actually present during the fight between Sojo and Chihiro, right around that time where he tried to hit the Mei on the street and Chihiro blocked it. It was right then. Now we skip a little bit into the future, November 1st, just 18 days after Sojo's death and only 7 days till the Rakuzaichi auction takes place. We are shown Hakuri trying to stop the kidnapping of a little girl, which goes horribly wrong. He gets beaten up and then taken in with them. As the gang who kidnapped him are deciding kind of what to do, goldfish start appearing, and we are shown a one-armed Chihiro who's there to find out more information about Sojo and the people who are behind him. Now it's revealed Sojo wasn't actually connected to the auction at all, and they have no idea why or how Sojo came into the possession of the Cloud Guardian. Everything's just not adding up. But we were also introduced to the Sazanami family, who are the ones who have ran the auction for the last 2 centuries. Turns out Hakuri was present when Chihiro was out taking out these goons and stops to speak to him, tells him that he's a part of the Sazanami family. Now Hakuri goes with Chihiro and gives him information on the Sazanami, revealing that they are famous and they are trained to be super strong in sorcery from a young age. Very important later on down the line. Hakuri reveals that he also wants to stop the Rakuzaichi auction from going ahead because he ultimately dislikes the event for its cruelty. Deeper storylines going on. I'd recommend that you read the manga for this one. However, Chihiro and Hakuri come face to face with Hiyuki and the two get into a fight. Hiyuki wields something called Flamebone the Starving, which is something that is similar to the Sacred Blades and can sort of match them on par. As their fight's heating up, Hakuri jumps in front of one of Hiyuki's Flamebone punches and tanks that shit. Hakuri tells Chihiro that he's the one who saved him a while ago, and Hiyuki says, "Fuck all that noise," and continues to run the fade with Chihiro. Getting more and more annoyed by the fact that Chihiro isn't actually choosing to use any lethal attacks, Hiyuki decides to use Rikugo's spinal column, and at that point Tafugu warns her that the subspace that they're in is about to collapse. Now we are officially introduced to Sazanami, the head of the household for the Sazanami family, and simultaneously we're introduced to a mysterious man. He'll become important later on. Chihiro and Shiba go and visit Kiora after gaining information about him from Hakuri. Now Kiora and Chihiro have a brief conversation with Kiora revealing how and what the storehouse is. Kiora shows them the inside of the storehouse, but Chihiro grows impatient. Shiba suggests maybe we should withdraw from now, but Kiora has joined by the Toe, an elite fighting group from the Sazanami family, and a fight breaks out with them and Chihiro. At the same time, Hakuri is found by and confronted by his older brother, Soya. We're now given a flashback to Chihiro's dad talking about the Shinuchi and how it's the one blade that can never be allowed to be used again, and this again will become super important later on. Lots of important stuff in this manga, kind of similar to JJK. It doesn't really explain itself outright, but you kind of go looking for the clues. Anyway, cutting back to Hakuri and Soya, we see Hakuri trying to jump off the building in an effort to get away from him and his brother. It's kind of darker motive there, to be honest with you. But his brother catches him, however, and we learn that his brother used to beat Hakuri viciously with the Sazanami family. Now, a small scuffle breaks out between them, with Shiba teleporting back to ultimately just bully Soya. Chihiro continues to fight with the Toe, and Shiba teleports Soya back to the battle. Now, Kiora witnesses this. Kiora figures out that if Shiba brought Soya back and Soya says that he found Hakuri, then Hakuri must have been working with them. Kiora reveals that he can also teleport anyone and anything that is registered to the storehouse, and after bringing Hakuri to the battlefield after some bargaining, Chihiro trades Enten in exchange for Hakuri's life. However, all of this was part of Chihiro's plan that he kind of formed on the spot. Fast forward to November 3rd, we see Chihiro, Shiba and Hakuri forming a plan. Chihiro figures that he can remotely sense the Enchanted Blade and, by extension, figure out whereabout Kiora is in the auction. November 8th, the Rakuzaichi auction officially begins. We are introduced to Mr. Inazuma, a goated young man who is here only to save his family. Chihiro enters the auction and saves Mr. Inazuma, who is being held by the guards after he stabbed one of them in the arm. Chihiro begins to fight with the guards with none other than Cloud Gouger, but it is a broken Cloud Gouger. We have a flashback to November 4th and November 6th, where the gang is figuring out their final plans for the auction. Cutting back to the present, the lights have been cut out in the auction house here, and Chihiro uses Mei, carving through the guards. Chihiro comes face to face with Hiyuki. Now they clear out more guards and meet in the middle at a subspace created by Tafuku so they can talk and negotiate. They both agree to work together temporarily to destroy the auction for the time being. Even though the motives aren't exactly the same, the common goal kind of aligns. The two continue to slaughter guards in order to make it to their selected destinations. We see the Toe guarding the door that Chihiro and the gang are making their way towards. However, Hakuri distracts Soya, and while Shiba teleports behind the remaining Toe members to find out how the door opens. Chihiro and Hakuri are almost meeting here, but they are cut off by a giant wall that appears, and Hakuri decides to stand and fight against Soya, while Chihiro faces off against what is more guards seemingly. However, something isn't quite right. You see, one of these guards in particular is pretty handy with his fighting skills, and it's revealed that one of these members is the member of the Hishaku, and on top of that, he's not just any member, he's actually the leader himself. Chihiro's mental starts to break slightly here, seeing that he's now in front of the man responsible for killing his father, but the two have a small scuffle in which the leader uses absolutely no sorcery at all. The leader reveals that all of this was so he can wield the Shinuchi, the one blade that's not supposed to be used. And that's the exact same blade that's being auctioned right now at the Rakuzaichi. The stress of the event causes Chihiro to unlock a new ability from Cloud Gouger, Mei Shred. Similar to the Kuro Shred from the compound where he entered to fight Sojo's men, we learn that Cloud Gouger, in solidarity with Chihiro, strained itself to save him, hinting at a deeper will and meaning behind these swords. The leader and Chihiro continue to fight, and we learn that quite frankly, John Hishaku here is actually just psychotic, sacrificing an arm and even taking a blow to the chest here to gain the upper hand slightly. We cut back to Hakuri, who is fighting with Soya, and we have a flashback of Hakuri, who is being taught by Shiba and Shiro how spirit energy works. However, the fruits of the labor now start to shine through when Hakuri finally unleashes Iso on Soya, knocking him back. Now, at the same time, breaking through the tree, Chihiro comes bursting through Soya's back. As this happened, Hiyuki appears behind John Hishaku, and John decides he's seen enough and disappears. But I also want to point out, his arm was severed, he picks up one arm, and it's really strange what he does with it. He picks up his arm, and it's really weird how that all happens. Anyway, we're shown a brief flashback of Hakuri's upbringing here, and we cut back to the present, where we find out that Shiba has dominated the Toe guards. However, Daten Sekai that was used by Sojo was given to Tenri, who now commands a version of that can rival the Enchanted Blades, but it is a more stable version. Tenri uses this, and Shiba and Tenri begin to fight even more. We'll give him even more insight into Tenri and Hakuri's upbringing. Hakuri and Soya continue to fight even further, with Soya mentioning how Hakuri hasn't even been the same since he was ensnared by that woman. That's an important part for later. We switch back to Shiba and Tenri fighting. Shiba, for the first time in the series, seems slightly pressed by this fight, which is kind of insane to see because Shiba just seems to be an absolute god when it comes to fighting within the series. Kiora sends swords to Tenri to help fight Shiba, and at this exact same moment, Chihiro pulls up, asking how's his timing. Chihiro and Tenri fight at the same time as Hakuri and Soya fight, and we are given a flashback to Hakuri's past. And we learn that he was introduced to a woman whose name we never learn, but is only referred to as the girl with icy skin. Now, this flashback is pivotal to Hakuri's growth and development throughout the series, and it is something that this video recap can't do justice on, so I heavily recommend going to read the story itself to get the full scope of that. But let's just say they made a plan to run away, and it didn't really work out properly. We cut back to the present here and we see Hakuri on the floor. Soya's Iso was just simply too strong. However, turns out Hakuri is a one-of-a-kind sorcerer within the Sazanami family, inheriting not just one, but two of the family's techniques, Iso and also the storehouse. Now, Hakuri awakens. Oh, also, by the way, I forgot to mention that whenever you see one of these panels, it's typically the author conveying a major moment within the story. Anyway, after some more back and forth, Hakuri lands the final blow on Soya and finishes the battle. Around the same time, Chihiro's battle with Tenri comes to an end because Tenri's body simply collapses from the Daten Sekai. It is revealed that the door that would allow them to enter the storehouse to retrieve Enten was actually destroyed, and the Toe were guarding a door that was broken, but they didn't know either. Instead, Hakuri sends in Chihiro, realizing that both his storehouse and Kyora's storehouse are connected. However, Hakuri can only send in items that he has touched himself. He can't retrieve items that Kyora has placed there himself. The two begin fighting, with the auction still proceeding on the outside of the storehouse. Now, after rescuing a few of the people in the storehouse here, Kyora decides it's time to lock it down a little bit further, and as the fight heats up, Chihiro manages to land a fatal blow on Kyora, causing him to get desperate and seal himself up with the Shinuchi. Now, Chihiro tries his best to get Kyora out of his hiding hole here, but as he finally breaks through the floor, he finds nothing but an empty box and no Kyora. Kyora, however, finds himself in the possession of the Shinuchi, and we are shown a familiar and important face, a face that I told you was going to be important later on. Yeah, remember this guy? Technically, he is the previous and technically the current wielder of the Shinuchi. He activates the sword by saying the word Magatsumi, and Kyoru is surrounded by flowers as all this happens, and his eyes also turn black. And he is now surrounded by an aura representative of a butterfly, as Chihiro seems to be in a bad situation. None other than motherfucking Hiyuki rocks up to join the battle. Now, it's worth noting that for the majority of this battle, Kyoru keeps the Shinuchi in its sheath. Recognizing that there is something invading his head, we are led to believe that it is actually the previous owner trying to take over his brain. Now we get to see some more of the powers from the Shinuchi that he holds, including Spider and Dragonfly. However, the attacks don't really land, as Hiyuki is thrown into the space by Hakari, who blocks them. Chihiro reveals that he copied Flamebone's ability way back when they first fought here, and the two work together to fight against the Shinuchi. Now, Kyoru draws just a sliver of the blade and unleashes Centipede, and that seems to send a shockwave out in all directions. And as this fight heats up, Kyoru's physical health declines as a result of using the blade, maintaining his own sorcery, and then also the slash given to him by Chihiro. Now the two close in for an attack and are pushed into the real world outside of the storehouse, because as this is happening, the influence of the Shinuchi is taken over further, creating flowers and weapons in the floor that take the life of anything that it touches. As Kyoru tries to fight its influence, Hakari sends Chihiro back into the storehouse to rescue the remaining people who are trapped. Chihiro manages to rescue the remaining folks, and just as he does, Kyoru succumbs to his wounds. And that concludes everything that has happened so far in Kagurabachi. Sort of. There's a few more chapters here. There's like 5 more chapters here, but given that they lead into the latest arc, I figured that I would let you all go and read them, because if you've made it this far in this video, you're probably already intrigued, and would highly recommend that you go and watch those, you go and read it, and then you come back and watch the videos that I've done on them so they all make sense. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Go buy yourself some merch because it helps support the channel. And as always, I will catch you guys all in the next one. Much fucking love. Big fucking kisses. Peace.